Hello, everyone. I'm Tad Bradley, the North American sales rep for Ultimate Safaris, based out in Seattle, Washington, and we're here today for our third installment of our Namibia Deep Dive webinar series, hosted by Birgit Bekker, Ultimate Safaris Sales and Marketing Director, live from Windhoek, Namibia. Good evening, Birgit. How are you?
Hello, Ted. It's a rainy day today, and I swear the last webinar I made, we also had rainy days. And for the last few weeks, all we had was hot, sunny weather. The farmers are pretty bleak. They're saying it's going to be one of the worst rainy seasons in a few years, which means no rains are coming. So the drops today are much welcomed and put me in a very good mood, especially because it's now a little bit cooler. So yeah, I'm really excited to do the Demystifying Etosha Namibia Deep Dive Part 3. Just for those attending, Tad is running the presentation and I'm doing all the talking. There is a bit of a lag between when Tad changes the slides and when I talk. But Namibia connectivity means that I can't run the slides and talk at the same time, even though I'm otherwise a very good multitasker. So I'm really excited to get into Etosha National Park. It's an obvious but yet very perplexing attraction. My first memory of Etosha is no memory at all, actually. When we were smaller, my parents used to drop us off at my grandma's on the way to Etosha, and then they would happily spend 2-3 weeks in Etosha without the kids moaning about, when's the line coming? I'm tired, I'm hungry, I need the loo, I want to get out of the car. And only later, when I was a little bit older, my parents would take me to Etosha. And I've always had mixed emotions about it. That's why I'm really excited to share it with you, because it's not an obvious attraction. A lot of people, Namibian Tourism Board calls the park the thing to do in Etosha, in Namibia, the main attraction. Other operators say, nah, you can skip it. Rather go to Botswana or East Africa. So we hope to just clarify exactly how to sell Etosha in the context of game viewing in Africa, etc. The next slide is going to talk about something I've touched before and something that Ultimate Safaris feels very strong about is starting in Etosha first. Unlike the normal tour, or what most operators sell is start in Sossus and in Etosha, because for them they say do the best game viewing in the end. But we feel that no matter how seasoned your travelers are, give them the game viewing first. They get excited, get it out of the system, and then we move onwards to the scenery of Namibia, which is truly really what we only sell in Namibia. Game viewing has always been a bonus rather than a guarantee. And some of these images look spectacular, but it's all about luck in the end with game viewing in Namibia. So the Etosha National Park is located in the northern Namibia. The Etosha pan is quite renowned for this big salt pan. And it's easy access to get there. You can fly there, you can drive. It's tar road all the way to the Etosha National Park. There are daily seat rates. Some go twice a day, as well as private charters, guided tours. So it is definitely an accessible destination in Namibia. The entire Etosha National Park covers about 5.5 million acres, about 22,000 square kilometers, of which about 5,000 square kilometers is the saline depressions or pans. And you see this Etosha pan is quite obvious on this map, but you actually don't drive through it. You can't walk through it. There are actually very few viewpoints of the Etosha National Park. This map indicates your routes that you drive. So you see a lot of the Etosha Park is actually inaccessible. And in national parks, you're not allowed to drive off-road. So you have to stick to the routes. And this is a map that very clearly highlights the routes that go along. Like most national parks in Namibia, gates open at sunrise, close at sunset, no exceptions. So even people that stay inside the rest camps have to return to the rest camps by sunset or will be heavily fined for that. Now, Etosha Park is the way we sell the game viewing. It is different to your Botswana or East Africa destination. So our top tips of how to sell Etosha Park is patience. I was moaning about the rainy season just now, and how we are missing, we need more rain. But it also adds to the advantage of game viewing in Etosha. Since you can't drive off-road to find the animals, and since it's a desert country, the cunning plan is that the animals come to you, which is to the water. And Etosha has a lot of man-made and natural springs where they go have something to drink. And this is what the excitement of Etosha is. The diversity of wildlife you see at one waterhole. Over 114 mammal species. And it's not uncommon to have elephant come through and rhino come through. And then, of course, the antelope. And this is where excitement comes, because the predators know that the animals have to come for a drink. So they lie in wait. And especially in the dry winter season, this is where I emphasize the seasonal, which starts from May through to October, November. The animals are forced to come to the waterholes because there's no water available anywhere else. And this is what creates this exciting interaction between animals. In the rainy season, the antelopes don't have to risk going to the waterholes because there's puddles everywhere in the park. So they can just stay deeper in the bush. And since you can't drive off-road to them, it means that chances of seeing this diversity of wildlife is greatly diminished. The other thing that's the reality of the Etosha National Park compared to, for example, Botswana especially, it's a national park. It's easy accessible, self-drivers, families, bus groups, large vehicles. Everybody comes there, sits at the waterhole. You don't even need a 4x4 to visit the park. So in the peak season, which is the dry season, but especially August, you have the park inundated with people. And that's one of my least favorite part about the Etosha National Park. In the busy season, it's busy with people too. And I've always felt that wildlife interaction should be like a quiet, contemplative moment between you and the wildlife. But if you're clever and you come in July and you miss the crowds of August, or come later in the year and it's still dry, you are guaranteed to have less crowds and still lots of animals coming through. Now, the other note that I always have to emphasize, especially from the context of ultimate safaris, is the question about Namibia wildlife resorts. They have strong marketing talk through NTB. Everybody talks about the Namibia wildlife resorts. These include Okaukuejo, Halali, Namatoni, Onkoshi, and Dolomite. But being inside the park does not guarantee better game viewing than if you're the private lodges outside the park. It's still fenced in area. The wildlife still doesn't hang around the rest camps. They're still deeper in the bush. The biggest frustrations we have with Namibia Wildlife Resort is they do deal with the mass market. While the accommodation is good value for what you pay, the service, I'm sorry, it's just disappointing. The staff is, most of the time disinterested and sullen. Guides are mere drivers. Your buffet food, you better hurry and eat that because otherwise it'll run out. And it's the usual hostile kind of fare, very uninspired. I mean, this gorgeous picture of the honeymoon setup it's a marketing picture. Your room will never be set up like that. So we are very loath to book the parks inside the park and warn people it doesn't guarantee better game viewing. We do book Okaukuejo for photographers because the waterhole is very busy with wildlife. And birders love going to Halali because there are some specialized semi-near endemic birds that they find there. But we also know photographers and birders aren't so fussed about the hosting. They just want to get that special experience. So the presentation today is focused on the lodges we generally work on, the mid to luxury markets. There are so many lodges in Etosha or surrounding Etosha that it's impossible for me to go through each and every property. So we're going to focus on the lodges we prefer. Generally, when we sell Etosha, we combine southern Etosha with eastern Etosha with the drive through the park. We find that offers a better diversity of wildlife. The biosphere and the game viewing is different in the Okaukuejo region to the Namatoni region. And the lodges we generally use are literally minutes drive away from these two respective southern and eastern gates. So your guests are not missing out on any wildlife experiences by staying outside the park. Now, one of the original luxury lodges in the area, well, many of you are familiar with it, the Ongava Lodge. It's one of those classic originals. Ongava Game Reserve is a private farm that over years brought down fences. They have a huge diversity of black and white rhino, healthy population of lions, variety of antelopes. They actually do rhino trekking, game drives on the Ongava Game Reserve, and easy access to Etosha Park. Each lodge has a floodlit waterhole, so you don't need to go to Okaukuejo. You can stay at Ongava and enjoy the floodlit waterholes there. They even have underground hides. So you have an amazing, diverse wildlife experiences. The only wildlife they don't have is elephants, although elephants break through the fences all the time to Ongava. But Ongava doesn't have any established elephant within the reserve as well. So I mentioned Ongava Lodge. Most of you are familiar with it. It's a classic original. It's one of your larger properties. It works great for guests that aren't as wild, if you want to put it like that. Air-conditioned rooms, pretty much more civilized in the context of your typical bush tented camp. Great family unit, indoor and outdoor showers, all these usual treats. Great viewpoint, and what's really cool is the underground hike, which is within walking distance to the lodge, and it's fenced in, so you can actually walk there. You don't have to get a guide to go there. Then the second lodge in the Ongava portfolio is Ongava Tented Camp. I really like this camp, always did. It's more your bush tented camp experience. It's mirror tented camps at Ongava Tented Camp, so it's much more classic safari look. But the best part is the waterhole. It's right there. You see some water park right there at the main area. There's no big fence covering the wildlife from the main area. Very cool pool where you can see the wildlife coming in. And yeah, lions pass, rhinos pass. It's quite an exciting experience and one of my personal favorites. Then on the other side is the villas, the premier camp, which is the Little Ongavas. 3 suites, private plunge pool, sala, one of the few lodges in Namibia that has a bathtub actually in, and its water restrictions is always a problem. But Ongava has a lot of underground water, big lounge, fireplace, truly scrumptious. It's probably the lodge with the furthest distance from the waterholes in height, but they make use of Ongava lodge's height. But this is definitely the kind of place where you enjoy much more exclusivity. We are very happy to send you the fact sheets of all these properties, because I know it's questions about family and how does it work with this. But I don't want to use this presentation to go into this detail about how many kids take how, what, and we'll send you the fact sheets afterwards of all these properties. Then really exciting, new and happening, opening mid-April, the new Andersons at Ongava. For those that are familiar with the old Andersons camp, it's been broken down and it's completely being rebuilt into the Andersons at Ongava classic camp. Here the focus is on the Ongava Research Center. A lot of people don't know that Ongava is custodian of black and white rhinos. They have a very expansive research program going on hand on the reserve. They have an anti-poaching unit, and the guests have never been really able to get a really immersive experience of it. So Anderson's Ongava is fully for children friendly because it's fenced in, but it's also, as they call it, where science and safari intersect, which is really exciting, knowing that Anderson's, of course, is going to be much more on research behind the scenes focused. Since the lodge is still being built, all I have is some blurry architect impressions. It's always difficult to get an idea and feel for the lodge until you've actually seen it open and in action. But you can see the bottom there's the Ongava Research Center and an auditorium. The rooms are larger than any of the others. And what an insider tip, it's offered in the same price as Ongava Lodge, Ongava Tented Camp. So you have that same value for a sparkling new lodge opening mid-April. And yes, they will be on time. They've got big groups coming in as from April, so they can't afford not to be open on time. So more info on that will come through. That's our favorite lodges, or only luxury lodge we recommend in Southern Etosha. But about an hour and a half from the Andersons Gate, still bordering the Etosha National Park, driving in the direction west, is the National Selection Properties called the Etosha Heights Reserve, which is home to Safari Hook Etosha Mountain Lodge. Now, Etosha Heights, I was there actually a few months ago again. This used to be a hunting reserve many years ago. And when I arrived there, when we first went there 3 years ago, we noticed the wildlife was still a bit skittish. They've got black and white rhino, elephants that break through Etosha, lots of lions. But by now, they've really calmed down. Our game drive was very productive. And this was in your perceived rainy season. We did have some rains there too. And we still saw black rhino and white rhino and elephant and lots of antelope. And it was really a beautiful reserve as well. A lot of open savanna land as well. A lot of people say, do we sell it as a Etosha destination? I would not. That hour and a half to the gate to go to the park is quite a long trek, and rather combine this lodge with other properties in more nearer to Etosha, because a game viewing inside Etosha Heights heights is really worth it for you to linger at the lodge. Safari Lodge Hook is their luxury lodge. It's your typical natural selection, good service, good guiding, gorgeous rooms, you've got a big pool, and a very cool underground hide as well, where they take you to. We actually had dinner at the hide, so lots of cool spots where they have surprise dinners for guests. They have another sister lodge on the reserve, which is the Etosha Mountain Lodge. It's a little bit more like that old colonial lodge style, a bit darker with a lot of thatch and wood. It works very well for small groups. Our ultimate Namibia actually stays at this lodge. And same game viewing and private experiences, which we found was really good. Again, works well for families and small groups, and great views. And for those that got the newsletter today from Natural Selection, the newly launched Safari House, I still have the original newsletter they sent to us a few weeks ago when they were first internally launching it. It basically was the farm owner's family home, and they decided to completely renovate it and update it and sell it to families, especially families or small groups, because this house is sold on an exclusive basis. You're not sharing it with other guests. You have your own chef, your own private guide taking you on game drives around on the Etosha Heights. And they were very excited because we have seen an increase in family safaris. And this is great. And because it's fenced in, you have, again, a little bit more accommodations towards families with younger kids. And private vehicle is standard, so you don't have to pay the private vehicle surcharge of the Safari House. So very excited that they just officially launched it, and just adds again to some other experiences in Etosha. That's kind of it for Southern Etosha region. We also book a lot of Eastern Etosha combined with Southern Etosha. Onguma Game Reserve is also one of those that a lot of you are familiar with, which do similar activities to Ongava. They do game drives on the reserve, sundowner drives. And again, this is the advantage of a private lodge outside the Etosha Game Reserve. Guests have to be out by sunset. But if they stay in a private reserve, they can actually do the morning visit to Etosha. And the afternoon, they go do a game drive on the private game reserve with beautiful setup sundowners. All these private game reserves have their own wildlife as well. So guests really get the best of both worlds. And generally, the private game reserve means getting away from the tourist masses as well, like a private sundowner like that. Now, Onguma, the fort, is their premium lodge accommodation option. When I first saw the images, I thought, that Moroccan style doesn't really fit in Namibia. We always want to be uniquely Namibian. But surprisingly, it fits really well within the context of it, and guests really love it. They do a 5-course dinner that is just out of this world. The suites are really beautiful, and they have this beautiful view of what they call the Fisherman's Plains for view. So it definitely works well for your top-end clientele. One of our favorites is Ongava Onguma. I shouldn't say Ongava. Onguma Tented Camp. I can imagine if you guys get confused with all the Ongavas, Ongumas, and Okaukuejos, and Onkoshis, and this and that. But Onguma Tented Camp works really well for your classic tented camp. It's got a waterhole right there as well. It's got really charming, much more an intimate feel to, which is less admittedly a more formal atmosphere than Onguma, the fort. So Onguma Tented Camp, we love to book a lot, accessible by air and by road, as all of these lodges are. Then another lodge that we use a lot, especially on our scheduled departures like the Ultimate Namibia and the Namibia Under Canvas, is Onguma Treetops, only 4 tree houses. It's really quite something different and quite out there. We found that small groups enjoy it the most if they use the exclusive use of the camp. Other guests might find it a bit too open, a bit too bushy, a bit out there. So again, it depends on your type of clientele who would appreciate this more open feel to it. I mean, literally you just have these canvas doors that roll down in front of your bed. So it's not really a private set lodge. And then the last option in the Onguma portfolio we sometimes use is the Onguma Bush Camp. We don't book this lodge really for groups because, as you can see, they've got 5 different room types, which is a mission if you have a group of 7, 8 rooms. It works really well for kids. It is larger than your average lodge that we generally use. It is more budget, mid-range. The waterhole is pretty cool right there. So again, for kids, it works really well. But we tend to go towards Onguma Treetops, Onguma Tent, and Onguma Fort as our preferred properties. Now, the last property portfolio that we go through are the Mushara collection. We really enjoy the Mushara collection. They're much smaller. The value that they offer is amazing. Every lodge in the Mushara collection offers probably among the best food in Namibia. For the price you pay, it's quite amazing. The only drawback to the Mushara collection is that there are old farms and they're not wildlife reserves where people have relocated wildlife in. So you don't have the traditional waterhole feel. It's basically a good base from which to explore Etosha. They don't do their own Sundowner Reserve drives or anything like that. What really works well is for families for Mushara Bush Camp. You know, everybody says they're family friendly because they just put in a family unit there and ta-da, that means we welcome kids. But anybody with kids knows it's much more complicated than just having a family unit. The guides and staff are very well equipped to deal with kids. They really involve kids to help in the kitchen. They've got a playground for kids. A very few lodges in Namibia, if any, have actually an Africa playground for the kids. The tents are built in such a way with a sleeper couch the kids can stay with their parents in the room. The courier shop has got the coolest kids' clothes collection. So when it comes to children, Mushara Bush Camp really works well. And of course, there's no age restriction on the kids. But another favorite of ours is the Mushara Outpost. They don't take kids. It's much more of a stylish, refined look. For the value you get for this lodge, again, it's just unbelievable value. And amazing food, great hosting. Yes, they don't have their own waterhole, own game viewing, but being mere minutes from the eastern gate of Etosha, this makes it a great base to work on. And they do offer fully inclusive bases where they take guests on game drives into Etosha Park as well. Every time I visit the outpost, I go, oh man, we undersell this property sometimes. I think for the value we get, we don't sell this enough. And honestly, the food is unbelievably exceptional. Then they've recently upgraded their villas. They've got 2 villas at the lodge. The pictures I have of the are basically a screenshot of the upgrades because they only have high resolution pictures of the old style villa, but they've lightened things. They moved away from this old colonial style. Only 2 villas, very exclusive. If you look at the price, this is the price per villa on DBB. They also offer FI. It's unbelievable. It doesn't compare to anything else that you can get out there. There's a fourth property I didn't put in there, which is the Mushara Lodge. And it's just because we really don't really sell it for our clientele. We've pushed it. It's a big and cheerful lodge, larger than your average lodge. Rooms are pretty standard. But generally speaking, the properties I've just been through are basically the ones we generally like to book if peak season allows for it. All of them offer easy access to the park. All of them offer easy access by road and by air. They're all serviced by scheduled seat rates. All of them offer FI and DBB options, which means it's great for self-drivers if they just want to go to the park themselves, but they also cater for flying safaris. As you can see from the portfolio, most of these collections offer something for the premier, for the family, for the traditional safari, and down to the budget travelers. So it makes it really easy to sell any of the properties. Experience-wise, it's very similar in terms of, I want to get to Etosha Park, but of course, accommodation is very different. And this is a typical scene in Etosha. I mean, of all my game viewing experiences, I must say, I've discovered how bloody lazy lions are. And it's so hot in Etosha, so you just look out for a good shade tree, guaranteed you'll find lions underneath it. That's how you find animals in Namibia. You look for the shade, and that's a guaranteed spot for something. Our game drive vehicles have pop-top roofs, which we keep open while we drive for the park. So guests can really get the proper safari experience. But we also arrange fly-ins and self-drive tours to Etosha. Talking about fly-ins, a lot of people ask us this. No, there are no scenic flights over Etosha Park. No low-level flying is allowed because it scatters the wildlife and scares them. Drone flying is highly frowned upon, and drones have been shot down, although I see more and more people are cheekily using drone footage to film in Etosha, which honestly, in a Namibia context, drones are terrible because they chase the animals away from the nearest water source so that they're so dehydrated and scattered and panicked that by the time they find their way back to the water hole, they might have been in real trouble. Whereas the rest of Africa, like Botswana, you've got water everywhere. So this is again a mad dash for Etosha. If people ask how long do you stay there for, I would say usually a perfect mix is 2 nights southern Etosha, 2 nights eastern Etosha. Then you increase your wildlife sightings. Most people stay only 2 nights. The anecdote about me and my family spending 2, 3 weeks is actually when you're at a perfect world. That's how long you want to spend in Etosha to guarantee your wildlife sightings. Because you will have days where you have duds and all you see is one blimmin' springbok. And other days you see cheetahs on one side and the elephants coming here and then a rhino getting way too close and friendly with the vehicle. So in Namibia, wildlife sightings require patience. And that is as standard in Etosha as anywhere else in Namibia. Just because it's being advertised as Namibia's premier wildlife destination doesn't mean it guarantees wildlife. As you saw from the map originally, a big part of the area is not accessible by road. So who knows what you'll come across the way. A lot of people ask if I'm going to Botswana, do I still bother with Etosha? Yes and no. If you have time and you've got 2 weeks in Namibia, by all means add Etosha because the diversity of wildlife is exciting. If you got like 4 days in Namibia, we tend to send you to the Sausage Northwest Skeleton Coast area and do the game viewing in Etosha, in Botswana. But very rarely have we found guests disappointing in Etosha because we must forget that we in the industry, we are so used to seeing exceptional wildlife sightings. So we see one lazy lion lying there, we're not even impressed anymore. But for our travelers coming through from Europe, from US, no matter how many times they come to Africa, when they see that first lion, they always get excited. Thank you very much for everybody's time and attention. Tad, is there some time for question and answers?
Yes, there is, and I was just going to put up the map of Etosha while we chatted here, and just in case we need to refer to it. But the first question regarding seasons, if you can just tell us again the seasons for Etosha, and also you mentioned some of the busiest months where there's more self-drivers and just generally more traffic in Etosha. Just to clarify when that is, kind of, if you can avoid that time period.
Okay, so in theory now is rainy season, February to March, April, but it hasn't been very good. And rainy season means that the animals tend to scatter more into the bush and not around the waterholes. But then from May, it starts drying out. It gets dry very quickly here. So May through to November is very good for wildlife sightings. And again, it really requires patience. The peak of winter, like August, September, absolutely. I mean, then it's bleak. The destination hasn't seen rain in months. Then the wildlife sighting is very good. But August is Namibia's premier wildlife, premier family and self-drive and bus destination. So yes, if you want to avoid the crowds, probably skip Etosha or Namibia in August. And it's blasphemy, I know. But if you can avoid it, just go maybe a little bit later. September already settles down and you avoid some of the bigger crowds. September, October is still peak season. So that would be it in terms of that. December, January is very hot. And when it's so hot and 5 drops of rainfall, the wildlife really scatters. And we had sometimes where in December over Christmas, I remember we had a week of rain, totally unusual. So of course you saw nothing. And then 2 weeks later, it dried so instantly and suddenly all the wildlife reemerged. So again, it's very unpredictable. So year round, it's good because also the time when it rains is also when we have a lot of baby animals and birding is exceptional. And when you have a lot of baby animals, you tend to have a lot of these terrible, for some others, lion kills and that kind of interaction. And the dry season, again, you have the very starving lion and you'll be pretty desperate. So you might have exciting experiences like that. And we can also send you a PDF, which gives you a little bit breakdown on the climate in Namibia and how it affects game viewing as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Birgit. Questions about Safari Hook. What would you combine it with in Etosha, Ongava or Onguma?
Okay, so both. It works absolutely fine. But, Safari Hook and then you go all the way through the park to Onguma is usually a good pick. Because then they can drive Safari Hook, just enjoy the game viewing there, then spend the day driving through the park to go to Onguma. That works then really well. But we've had just as many guests doing Ongava and Safari Hook as well. Most people's FOMO, as long as they're in that park for a bit, they don't know what they're missing and they're happy.
And that actually brings up a good question in terms of the drive time between the two regions, the southern Anderson Gate where Ongava is, and the eastern gate where Mushara and Onguma are located. What's the
Yeah.
drive time? I mean, generally speaking, we do it as a full day's game drive. But
Yes.
can you just talk more
Yes.
about that distance and how that
I
day
think
would
it's
work?
I think it's about 175 kilometers from one gate to the next, so it's not far. But there is a strict speed limit within the park, no more than 60 kilometers an hour. But the whole point is that as you drive through the park, you stop along the water holes. So this is not something you want to drive through. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'll just push through." I said, "No, no, no, no. When you see that line next to the road, you are going to stop and look at it." So we say full day, have a picnic in the park. Usually we get to the other side by early mid-afternoon. And a lot of wildlife disperses all in the heat of the day and only gets better later in the day. So it's sussed out how we do it.
And question about Mushara. Why pick Mushara versus the others? Is it only if Ongava and Onguma have no space? I think referring to the fact that there's no wildlife on
Yeah.
the reserve there.
No, Mushara works well on that price range as well. Exceptional value. And we've easily booked Mushara outpost on one side and Ongava on the other side. That works well. And it's just the value they offer and the children friendliness that works really well.
Right. And please repeat
I
the
mean,
name of the first camp you mentioned in the Mushara collection that has the family playground. That's the Mushara
that's
Bush Camp, right?
correct, Ted, yes.
And what was that? My question is, what was that vehicle in that picture of the playground on the Mushara Bush Camp slide?
It's a little tractor that they built there. They
Ah,
built a little
cool.
tractor for kids to play around with old oil drums and stuff. Yeah, yeah,
Very
very cool. I think there's a
creative.
giraffe you can climb up on as well, like a little metal giraffe and stuff.
Okay, drive time to Etosha from Windhoek.
It's tar road, so 5 hours probably from the southern side and maybe 6 hours from the eastern side. It's main road, highway, tar road, lots of towns along the way you can stop, but generally people make it in 5 hours or less.
And oftentimes people will stay at Okaukuejo on the way to break up that drive as well.
Yes, yes, exactly. The one thing, it is pretty boring drive. 5 hours on a gravel road around scenic and you're excited, but 5 hours on this road, you just after a while you're just bored and it's straight and there's nothing to see except farms on each side. I think that's why the 5 hours always feels longer for me on this stretch, even though it's an easy drive.
And then game drives, if you're staying in these private reserves, any of them, um, are the game drives done by the lodge vehicles and lodge guides, by ultimate guides, a combination of the two? How do
Yes,
you?
all of the above. So Ongava and Onguma go with their open game viewers. They've got side canvas, but otherwise they're open game viewers. They go into the park and do Ongava reserves or Onguma game drive reserves. We go into the Etosha Park. Our own ultimate cars can't do game drives on the private reserves at Onguma and Ongava. So then we make use of the local lodge guides and vehicles, but Etosha, when it's with our guide and vehicle, we always do it ourselves with our guide guests. So it's all of these options. And then self-drivers don't have to do any activities and just spend the whole day on their own in Etosha as well.
And the last question is regarding flying. I think it's what type of planes are flown in and who is doing the flying into the different reserves.
So Scenic Air does the seat rates into Eastern and Southern Etosha, Ongava now specifically, and Onguma, and Wilderness Air flies Ongava to Windhoek. None of the charter companies fly into Okaukuejo Etosha. The airstrips are unfenced or something, and the lines charter the tires. So, and we don't do fly-ins into Okaukuejo. That places are not meant for the Okaukuejo thing.
Those are the Namibian wildlife resorts
Yes.
inside the park, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I think we've had a few.
Now there's a few more questions.
Under the wire here. Are the yellow non-paved roads in Etosha on the map there?
Yeah, they're all non-paved. All of them gravel. Yeah. But you don't need 4x4. It's very good compact clay or compact tarmac. What is that? Kalk. My German coming up here. But yeah, it's very good gravel roads.
You Namibians do grading very well of your gravel roads, I will say.
Yes.
Everywhere,
Yes.
generally.
Yes.
I can never pronounce it, but Okaukuejo.
Creo.
There
Yes.
you go. Can you do any kind of special mobile camp setup in the regular campsite? Do you ever
No, we don't
augment
do
the
that.
amenities of the park? Bring a chef,
No,
bring better
because the
linens.
campsites are crazy busy with bus groups and overland groups and self-drivers. When we do mobile camp setups, it's meant to go away from the crowds and people and noise and exclusively set up. But Okaukuejo camping sites are actually one among the busiest, chaotic. Imagine a bunch of 18-year-olds that just came from Cape to Cairo putting their music out loud on the campsite. That's what you get there. Yes, yes.
But we do.
We can't improve camping ever in Okaukuejo.
If there is no alternative, and that's the only camps that are available using one of the NWR properties, whether it's in Etosha or down in Sossusvlei, being with an ultimate guide is one way to kind of manage the service issues. However, where the guide can do the bring the hospitality of the ultimate service and kind of bridge some of those issues. I mean, not necessarily ideal, but that is one advantage to having a private ultimate guide with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can do some hand holding there.
Right. So flurry of questions here at the end. Are there rates at the private reserves at both full board with an ultimate guide, and then do you also have game package rates if they fly in? Which is
yes, we do. So when we have fly-ins, we do fully inclusive, and we do guided with ultimate guide. We usually do full board only. We do book and include an afternoon game drive with the lodge guide, and then we include our Etosha game drive, park fees, and stuff like that. So, generally you stay only when you do fly-in or guided, you kind of stay fully inclusive. It just depends on who takes you on which activity.
And I think you answered this, but regarding Safari Hook, but what would you combine Etosha Heights with? So Etosha Heights being Safari Hook and Etosha Mountain Lodge.
Yeah, either Ongava or Onguma. Just works either way.
And then that just brings up another question for me. Drive time then from Etosha, the different parts of it, to Damaraland, if you're doing a driving safari. What does that day look like?
Okay, so very important. If you do want to combine Damaraland with Etosha, you have to put at least one night in southern Etosha. It's impossible to drive from eastern Etosha to the Damaraland region in a day. You can do it by going all the way via that boring tar road that I was talking about, going via Tsuma Bochirongo, and we've done it before, especially when we struggled with availability in southern Etosha.
So but basically outside the park. You don't drive through the park. Yeah.
No, you won't make it out of time because of the speed limit. So otherwise, southern Etosha to Damaraland, it's 4 hours from Ongava to Moani. It's easily manageable.
Okay, I think we've exhausted the questions. Thank you all for your attendance and great questions today. As always, we will post this webinar replay on our YouTube page and YouTube channel, and we'll send out a link to it. So if you missed any of it or you want to share it with colleagues, you'll be able to do so in the next day or two. And knock on wood, no technical issues today, Birgit. So yay, way to go. Way to Canadian internet. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me or Birgit. And we, again, appreciate you joining in. We'll have the next deep dive, I think, is going to be on Damaraland sometime in the next few weeks. So stay tuned.
Yay! My favorite place.
The heart and soul of Namibia. So stay tuned for that. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you for staying up late and working late tonight, Birgit. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for everybody listening in.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.